It's a really fascinating experience to be with these amazing people today on stage. And of course, people write for a lot of reasons. And here's a writer who's written, and let's hear him first.
I'm going to read something, a few verses written back in 2005 in Tamil Nadu, in Pondicherry. It's called With the Wind, and it's dedicated to great French poet and traveler, Blaise Cendrars. Between two journeys, as always, gazing at the green sea of the Bengal Bay, I'm visited by simple thoughts, simple as sleeping palm trees, and interwoven as neatly as the white flowers in the nocturnal hair of Tamil women. All comparisons vanish in the sight of the high seas, where nothing is discerned and nothing ought to be discerned. This is where I began. This is where I'll end, after a few more recoveries and a few more strolls down the Strand. Thank you.
So that was Dinko traveling through India and writing. So could you tell us a bit about what inspired you to write that poem and from where you were writing it?
Yeah, what inspired me was simply being there, and among many other places in India that I visited, which started to happen long ago. As I said, this was written 20 years ago, and those journeys began even earlier than that, around I think the year 2000 more or less, when I started to visit not only India but various parts of Asia, of the subcontinent, and its countries and so on. And since, of course, I had been writing before that, not so much travel writing, which I didn't even imagine I would do, but India seems to be the place that somehow incited me to write about it. Not directly, not as sort of travel diary, which of course I write, but I don't publish, or as a sort of just impressions or advice for other writers, which is also fine, of course, but I meant it to be just somehow integrated into what I write as a setting, as a set of characters which I met, and some really incredible encounters that I had, first of all. So it's this old-fashioned word, inspiration. That's what it has been.
That's lovely. So Dinko, I mean, he's been traveling through India. He's a Croatian, and he's been traveling through India to do this. And people are writing for various reasons, for various emotions that kind of inspire them to write. And Dadapeer has been writing some wonderful poetry and dabbling in various other kinds of literature based in Bangalore. And he writes mainly on queer themes. So Dadapeer, could you tell us a bit about what you're writing and why you're inspired to write the themes that you write?
Hello everyone. So basically, I didn't imagine initially that I would write, because I was doing my master's in mathematics. So I thought like maybe I'll do my PhD and then I'll become professor. But I came to Bangalore to become a TV anchor. But I was reading back then. So maybe that, when I was reading along with mathematics in a breaks, so I used to feel like, I also have a story to tell. I also have something to tell or something to, explore. So writing basically gives me a courage to be myself, to discover myself. So which basically gives me a comfort, and it's an easy comfort. So where I cannot express myself in front of society and a family or something. So which the writing in front of a paper or in front of a laptop, which gives me, a space to explore and discover. So I think the fact that who I am and who I want to be, to who I want to make a friends with, what I wanna, respond to, or do I want to respond to, and what are the things which really matters to me, which really makes me anger, or like how I, revert back, and express myself. I think those are my ponderings around it. So my identity being a Muslim, in that, okay, we belong to a community called Pinjar. So being a Muslim, being a queer, and being, writing in Kannada, and all of that, I think, which is very easily came in my writing. But so we are living in an era, where the identities, politics are in a huge take, and it is very necessary of being Dalit and feminist and Muslim voices, and all those things. Maybe I am taking advantage of being queer writer. I don't know. So yeah, that's an honest answer I can give.
So sweet. Yeah, and similarly, Catrin is writing, I mean, she writes in English and also in Welsh. She writes poetry and transposes it, or, translates it into the visual medium, but she doesn't like to be classified as a poet per se. So could you take us through what you're doing, your whole expression as a creator?
Yeah, I really resonated with what you were saying about finding maybe like a supportive network through culture and through books. I think I'm quite interested in arranging texts and reflecting within that arrangement. So finding maybe different ways of exploring knowledge by layering things. So it's kind of like a layering technique, which can become a film, but it can also be a poem. And yeah, I think that poetry is very similar to filmmaking in the sense that it's kind of a container, so you can gather many things together, and you can layer maybe geographical ideas, cultural ideas, and also like this emotional landscape, which becomes a part of this expansive map. So I think that collage and layering is very important to me, and using methods that are quite unstable, so exploring uncertainty and fragility through through language, I suppose, but also through allowing text to maybe communicate with other texts. I quite enjoy, so I love being around other writers and sort of listening to people and maybe gathering those conversations and transferring that in different ways.
Tomica is also a trained psychologist, and she dabbles in different genres. So could you tell us a bit about how you work on your writing, also with the background of being a psychologist?
Well, I think for myself that first I became a writer and then psychologist, because I started to write when I was in elementary school, basically, and I started to write my first novel when I was 17. And that novel, of course, was not published, but I did finish it, so it is something, it means something to me. So as a psychologist, I was teaching psychology of creativity at Verne University in Zagreb, and I have to say that psychology of creativity is boring compared to being creative to me. So as a psychologist, I think I had an opportunity, a precious opportunity, to gather plenty of stories from people who did enrich me as a person so much that I really have a need to write. Because after listening so many stories, I just need to write my own stories after this. And I cannot really divide one from another any longer, except maybe I can say that my characters mean to me a lot, and I have a special connection with them. I talk to them, and maybe I do need psychological help, but I'm going to ask myself because I'm the best psychologist. So that's it. There's where circle ends.
And you said you completed your first novel when you were 17 years old?
No, I started to write it when I was...
Started at 17, and you completed
when
it
I was 21.
21, okay. So is she the youngest writer over here who completed her novel when she was 21? Or do we have contenders?
the young attempts. This is what a Croatian ancient poet called when he referred to his old writing, youthful writings. He said it's you could translate it as an offspring of darkness, and so. I could say I began writing it when I was 9 but it was a graphic novel, which had 120 pages, but not so much text in it, and it's because I actually began with drawing and not writing, but some writing was included, so that was, I guess, the beginning.
So he wrote his novel, first book when he was 9.
A graphic novel.
Graphic novel.
Yeah.
All right.
And then you made your old class work for you, write for you, so you did not complete it by yourself, okay?
Yeah, okay. That was a trick, you know.
Sounds good, like you started from 9.
Dadapeer, would you like to read something that you've written and in Kannada and also tell us what it means in English?
I'm not going to read a queer poem for a change. So this is a poem in Kannada. So my friend Ekta made a film based on the Shivkumar Batalvi's poetry called Birha, inspired by his images and all, which talks about migration and all. So then I watched a film, then I responded to the film, then I wrote a poem. So I think it's a cycle. So I'm just going to read that poem. It's called Biraha. ರಾತ್ರಿ ಮಧ್ಯಾಹ್ನಗಳ ಅಶಾಂತ ನಿದ್ರೆಯ ಕನವರಿಕೆಗಳ ಮಡಕೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಕಂಡು ಕಾಣದೆಂಬಂತೆ ಮಿಂಚಿ ಮರೆಯಾಗುವ ಮಂಜಿನ ಬಿಳಿಯಂತಹ ಆ ಸ್ವಪ್ನ ಲೋಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಥಾವರವಾಗಿ ಕುಳಿತ ಎಲ್ಲ ಜಡ ವಸ್ತುಗಳ ನಡುವೆ ಸೈಕಲ್ ನಡೆಸುವ ಪೋರಣ ಹಾಗೆ ಹೊಳೆದು ಹೋದ ಅವನಿಗೆ ಅವನು ಕಂಡ ಈ ಲೋಕದ ಸಕಲವೆಲ್ಲವೂ ಪರಿತಪಿಸುತ್ತವೆ. ಅವಕಾಶ ಸಿಕ್ಕರೆ ಸಾಕು ಮನೆಯಿಂದಾಚೆ ಓಡಿ ಊರ ಸುತ್ತುವ ಪೋರ ಸುತ್ತುತ್ತಾ ಪರಿಧಿಯನ್ನೇ ದಾಟಿಬಿಟ್ಟ ಹಾಗೆ ಅಮ್ಮ ರೊಟ್ಟಿ ಬಡಿಯುತ್ತಾ ಅದರ ಅಂಚನ್ನು ಜತನದಿಂದ ಸಂಭಾಳಿಸುತ್ತಾ ಹನಿಗಣ್ಣಾಗುತ್ತಾಳೆ. ಅವನ ಪ್ರೇಮಿಸಿದ ಸಖಿಯರೆಲ್ಲರೂ ನಡುರಾತ್ರಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಎದ್ದು ನಿದ್ರೆ ನಡಿಗೆಗಳೊಳಗೆ ಅವನ ಹೆಜ್ಜೆ ಗುರುತುಗಳ ಹೆಕ್ಕುತ್ತಾ ಚುಕ್ಕಿ ಚಂದ್ರಮ ಕಪ್ಪು ಬಾನಿನ ಆ ಮರದ ಕೆಳಗೆ ಬರೀ ಮೂಳೆಗಳೇ ಆಗಿ ಹೋಗುತ್ತಾರೆ. ಜನರಿಗವರು ಅಂಜುತ್ತಾ ಹೇಳುವ ಕಥೆಗಳಾಗಿ ಉಳಿದು ಹೋಗುತ್ತಾರೆ. ಕಳೆದು ಹೋದ ಅವನು ಹುಡುಕುತ್ತಾನೆ ಅವನನ್ನು, ನೆನಪಿಗಾಗಿ ಹೇಳುತ್ತಾನೆ ಕೊನೆಯ ಬಾರಿ ಈ ಇಸವಿಯ ಈ ದಿನದಂದು ಈ ಶಹರದ ಇಷ್ಟಕ್ಕೆ ಕಾಣೆಯಾದೇನೆಂದು. ತನ್ನನ್ನು ಹುಡುಕಿಕೊಡಿ ಎಂದು ಅಂಗಲಾಚುತ್ತಾನೆ. ಅವನ ನೆನಪಿನ ಮುದ್ರೆಯೊತ್ತಿದ ಮೂಲೆ ಸೇರಿದ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸಕಲ ವಸ್ತುವು ಮರೆತಿಲ್ಲ. ಮಂಜು ಮುಸುಕಿದ ಆ ಕಾಡಿನ ಮರಗಳ ಬೊಡ್ಡೆಗೆ ಕಟ್ಟಿದ ತಂತಿಯ ಮೇಲೆ ತಣ್ಣಗೆ ಮೈಕೊರೆವ ತಂಗಾಳಿಗೆ ತೊಯ್ಯುತ್ತಾ ಈಗಷ್ಟೇ ಒಣಗಿಕೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತಿರುವ ಅವನ ತುಂಬು ತೋಳಿನ ಆ ಕಪ್ಪು ಅಂಗಿಯನ್ನು ಪೋರ ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ಈಜಲು ಹೋಗಿದ್ದಾನೆ, ಇನ್ನೇನು ಬರಬಹುದು. ಸೊ this is basically about which is, okay, if I can decode it, which talking about the migration in a different way. So so mother is also concerned about a son who is migrated to a city in search of a job, and even in turn a son who is migrated also have a story to tell. I also lost something, not only you, and also his lovers also have some tale to tell. So in all the way everybody are longing for each other, which so in a larger context which talks about the biraha, which means a longing. So where son is longing for mother and a lover, and and in other way around. Thank you.
Very beautiful. So that was a poem about longings, and there are different inspirations. Catrin was talking about her own inspirations for creativity. So could you tell us a bit about the kind of ideas that inspire you to write, and if you'd like to sort of present one of your works to us?
In terms of inspiration, I'm often writing, like I said earlier, with other texts. So I work with scientists, and I've worked with archaeologists to kind of create different entry points and translate information or knowledge in different forms. So I'm quite interested in what happens when you place different bodies of knowledge together. to see what kind of syntax of relations and transfers emerges in that space. And it's interesting when you place emotional language with scientific language, what happens when those two things meet. And the poem I'll read is, it's in Welsh, but it's playing around with ideas around translation. So I was responding to a painting initially by Matisse, which is the dance, where many people's hands are held together. So it's looking at this kind of sense of wholeness or unity that a poem can offer out. And there is this kind of thinking within the poem about our mother tongue and what that means. It can mean many different things, I think. So. Dychmygwch gwch disglair. Imagine the sound of a boat. O dan y sŵn mae llyn. Under the sound is a lake. I brofi llawnder y llyn, cymwch eich het dal ddi a llenwch eich sidan a dŵr. Ddychmygwch mae sidan yw'r unig air. Dim cweit yn anfeidrol. Dim cweit yn ddidderfyn. Silk not quite infinite, not very infinite. But you arrive at the lake and it's the only word. It moves and lets itself be moved. Un medr o sidan I lenwi het dal di, I lenwi un bwced o dŵr. Rhwng dau maes gwall, gwall yw'r llinell rhwng dŵr a gramadeg, rhwng sidan a freuddwyd. Tipiwch eich het llawn dŵr wyneb I weired. Dim mamiaeth on I bai bod mam, dim symudiad mewn cydysodiad. Dim lleiad on I bai bod llygaid. So within the poem there is an image of a woman who is measuring the level of water in a lake with a hat, which is like a traditional Welsh hat, which is made of felt and silk. And the poem ends with a quote by the poet Rosemary Waldrop, who says, "No mother tongue unless a mother." But I'm really looking at the landscape as this other mother, or this this way of thinking about family in a different way, maybe through the landscape and through our connection with place. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Earlier we were talking with Tomica and Dinko as well about, the different aspects that influence our writing, whereas at the one end there's religion and the other end there's nature and people in their truest forms. It's so living in Croatia and writing in that sort of a political landscape, religious and political landscape. Could you tell me what you're writing about, what the thought process is about, and what are the influences thereof?
Yes, I think that situation in Croatia inspired me for my last novel, because the situation is pretty somehow, there's very strong influence of Catholic Church in the schools, and 90% of kids are going to learn like this. We call it vjeronauk, which means belief and knowledge at the same time, although it's hard to have it.
Basically catechism.
Okay. Yeah, so many parents just put their kids to go and to listen to these stories as they are truth, and I basically think it's not healthy for kids, to look at the man at the you crucified, Jesus, while also having these puppies and stuffed animals, playing with them, and also watching cartoons. And then there is, a crucified man, and he has a big importance. And how they grasp this this idea at all. And I was writing about it because I think somehow creativity, at least from my point of view, needs to be above all this. So my characters in my novels, particularly in the last novel, I play with the idea of God and devil. For example, for one character, they are imaginary friends. For the other character, they're more human-like beings somehow. Devil gives strength, and it's a positive character. in a way. And God can be annoying sometimes, maybe. And you know, I have right. I think we should all have right to do something with this, you know, imagery, which was given in a way that we should not question it. And why not? So this is how I somehow try to um, put some other values there, which are above what has been told about God or devil.
That's very interesting, you know. And is it difficult to be living in Croatia and surrounded by all these ideas and to write, just kind of uh, pull yourself away from what's going on and write the way you're writing?
It's very
Are
fresh.
people reading you? Yes.
This novel is very fresh. So we're going to see what they're going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Dinko, you're also working on some very fresh ideas and thoughts with different levels of inspiration. So, could you connect us, you know, between living in Croatia and writing from the Croatian perspective, and also moving out and using the whole palette of India as your inspiration to write, because you've been traveling from the Himachal Pradesh to Tamil Nadu, writing, seeking inspiration. So, take us a bit through this.
Actually, right now it's we talking about the situation there and in Europe in general. Right now in the street where I live in Zagreb, which is the capital of Croatia, I think there are more Indians than Croatians. So, which in some part of Europe is normal. In some neighborhoods in UK or elsewhere, you have these so-called illegal immigrants, which come not, of course, only from India. I think most of Indians are legal, but that's not the point. You have many people who come from countries in war and who really are in danger, who don't come just to find a better living, but to save their lives, and they're pushed back because of the politics of European Union, and Croatia is on the border. So some of the politicians in our country are very proud of being those who will save Europe from those, threats. Poor people who they see as threats. So that's something that really annoys me, and that's also has been topic of my writing, although it might not be very pleasant to hear, but I think it's our task to address this question, because it's very painful, it's very fresh, and the perspective that we can see is really not bright, because it's part of a global, I would say, rejection of the other, of drawing very strict borders. Now we have Trump, who is fighting against what he calls illegal immigrants, against Mexicans, and but it also happens in Europe. Maybe it's not, we don't hear so much here about that, but it's very much present, and I think it's urgent, and it's just humanely very, very painful.
So that's very interesting, you know. I didn't know there were so many Indians in Croatia, actually. Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I've heard of them in all kinds of countries, but they seem to be everywhere. We seem to be everywhere. Yeah. So, Dadapeer...
Which is really fine.
Which is fine. You're okay with it. Okay, thanks. So, Dadapeer, Dinko brought up a very interesting observation of, the pain of writing and expressing, especially when you're othered, when you're not considered part of the system, right? So could you talk about your own personal experience as it stands in the Indian milieu, especially with respect to how the political system is transforming and how it's impacted your own life?
Okay. To talk about myself, as I said, I'm a Muslim. I belong to a community called Pinjar. It's like Dalit in Hindu thing. And I'm a queer. So all these things are like, multiple intersections. I also migrated from my village to the city, and the culture thing, and also the language thing. Because I born and brought up in a very village setting where I learned, I struggled to learn English. All those things are there. So like me, there are many people who struggle with multiple intersections of the language, the caste, the the gender identity, and and migration, and the political scenario in the state or and in the country, and too many things are controlling. And apart from this, even say our own family controls it, as say she was saying about the schooling thing. So I was teaching in a school where the schools also influences and controls in some sort, because I studied in RSS propaganda at school. So if you look from a back, oh, everything is cool. So they're teaching patriotism. Oh, perfect. There's a perfect picture. But the school where I was teaching, the proprietor was Hindu guy, but he named the school as some convent school, thinking that, oh, parents thinks that the convent gives the best education. So, but the parents who used to send their kids to the school were, from a Marwadi community, and all the thing was, right-wing lenient, the mindset. So I think like there are multiple the controlling thing, family, society, and even the political government also tries to control you, and they have eye on you, right? So okay, what is going to write, all that thing. So that regressive. Even in the working environment have eye on you. So even working environment, not only with writing, so even they also have an eye on your Facebook and other accounts. So even in this multiple, this surveillance. So if you think like this, it's really demands a courage, and more than a courage, a love towards the self and society, which makes us writing. Oh, okay, let's see what comes me. Let us write. So even in terms of poetry, and also as she was saying, it is so the writing is so fragile, and to explore the vulnerable thing. So in Kannada we say that writing sahitya andre adondu obba kattakadeya manushana ಒಂದು ಅಳಲು ತರ ಅಂದ್ರೆ it's which talks about the sufferings of the last man or last human being who was standing in the last line. In that way, so in my case, I just focused on I'm just gonna write what is my tale is. So basically, I just published one short story collection. So usually they say that first short story collection is more of autobiographical than, because we usually encounter our life and what happened, and maximum what happened in our friends' life and neighbors. But that's it. Reality is maybe this in my second collection. I'm just thinking, okay, what are the stories which I'm really interested to tell? So why I'm telling this story? Even if I'm telling this story, okay, what are the even whether market is controlling me, or the anti-politics is controlling me, and what is controlling me, or aesthetic art for art is controlling me? Why I want to tell this story? What I'm gonna write, tell a story. Am I just controlled by, oh, I want to tell it in a different way, and so that I'll win awards and I'll be called for Lit Fest like this? So what is driving me to tell a human stories? All these things I'm just pondering upon, and that's a...
That's so beautiful and touching, Dadapeer. Living in a time where there is the politics of language, there's the politics of religion, and also the politics of the medium of expression that we are using, in telling the stories that we want to, or in transforming the message that we want to. I'd like to ask Catrin, you're kind of using the visual medium a lot to say it. So by transcending words or by translating those words into another creative format, visual format, what are you doing, and how has it sort of impacted the communities or the people in terms of the messages that you're trying to take across?
Yeah, I think, well, I'm really interested in transference. So, and I'm also interested in working collaboratively. I'd say mostly all of my work is made with other people, or with landscapes, or with archive material. I never work on my own, so there's always some level of participation there. And I'm interested in, how, or what happens when something is activated through that participation, or through that viewership, if it's a film, or through listening, if it's a poem. But I think there's something interesting about like fluidity and like creating a space that is fluid and accessible. And in terms of like the way we think about knowledge as this sort of truth. Like we're kind of obsessed with truth, I think, in the world, or like knowing everything. And I'm quite interested in thinking about how to present not knowing, or absences, or uncertainties and voids and gaps. So I do reference like holes a lot, or I look at landscapes like quarries, which for me sort of acts like it's a conceptual framework for me to work with. So if you're looking at a quarry, time is very visible, and it allows me then to kind of think about gaps in history or stories, or and I think there's some kind of looking at loss as well, maybe personally, but also collectively in this time that we're living through. So really, yeah, I think it can be a powerful thing. But for me, it has to be communal and collective. Yeah.
That's so interesting, given that for a writer, it's always a lonely process, sitting somewhere, locking yourself up and writing. How do you do it, Tomica?
It is a lonely process. It just cannot be different. But then, if you take your characters really seriously, then you're not lonely. I really like to explore where my characters lead me, because sometimes I do have idea where should I lead them. Sometimes I don't. But to let them guide me in some places within myself, that is maybe the biggest enrichment for myself when I see what they're telling me, because I discover things about myself, and that is the beauty of the process.
Could you tell us about a couple of the characters that are telling things about yourself? I mean, just kind of bring forth one or two of your characters that you'd like to tell us about.
Sure. Yes. Well, about my last novel, which I already mentioned, there is one character who lives at the beginning of the 20th century. It's 1920, and she is translator of the rain. So she does not have a name. Her name in the novel is translator of the rain, and she's actually idealizing her husband, who is far away in the prison in Australia. And she's translating his letters to her, which are just her imagination. When he comes back, he's a totally different person. It's idealization. And then when he really comes back, she is changing, and she's becoming nasty in many ways which we don't expect, which is always like if you idealize somebody, then you need to put him down too. So this would be a traditional woman who will, be a translator of the rain and be with herself all the time, because that man is not there. He's not talking. He cannot talk. Things like that. And then there is the other character who lives in 70s, and she's a silentess. She does not speak. She refused to speak because her mother was really tough. She was beating her, and so she refused to speak, and that was like her rejection of mother and of the world in general. And but she has some kind of, really some kind of very subtle feeling for other people, and she reads their stories. So she tells these stories within herself. And the third character is composer, let's say, because from the very chaotic sounds like this, we hear the air conditioning, we hear the noise there. She is actually creating compositions, and in her head, but later in reality too. So in every character, I put some part of myself. Of course, I was idealizing men when I was in my 20s. Of course, I was, yeah, that means to fall in love. And of course, I'm therapist, so I'm silent while I'm listening to other people's stories. So there is part of me there in the silent test. And then there is a part of me, myself, in this composer, because that was the first thing I wanted to be. I wanted to be a composer. So for me, it's a really interesting thing to put these parts of myself into my characters and let them make the world which reflect myself to myself. So, yeah.
Lovely. So there's always this Jekyll and Hyde thing going on with all your
Of
characters.
course, it has
with
to
every
be,
single
yeah,
character.
both there.
Yeah. Lovely. And so, yeah, Dinko, tell us about the characters that you have come across and that have inspired you, both in your poetry and in your novels. You know, they could be, you're talking about interesting Indians living in Croatia, or Indians you've come across here, or they could be from anywhere else. I mean, people from anywhere else, or situations or landscapes.
Well, actually, since I write, most of my writing is poetry, it's perhaps not that much about characters. Of course, there are characters, but I do not develop them in a way a novelist would do. Although I wrote a novel, but it's more of an experimental novel, so to say. But I do, of course, try to approach various beings in the broadest sense. That's what I tried to do in my last book, which is called The Book of Visits.
It's a lovely book, I have to say.
Thank you. And it's my attempt to try to approach. It goes from very tiny beings, some of them those that we call, which are not living beings, but stones, minerals, and then bugs and flies and so on, all the way to human beings in this chain, and to some, let's say, imaginary or supernatural beings. And what I tried to do with all of them was not to, impose upon them, but to try to be a guest. This is why it's called the Book of Visits. So I tried to exercise humbleness, which I think is very important for writers and for human beings in general, and just to try to not to impose notions or to call all the notions into question, to see all those beings from all possible aspects that I can think of. And so, and among them are of course some human characters, like my father, or some of my friends and so on. If you allow me, I'd like to say just it came to my mind when I was thinking about this topic, why we write, to turn things a little bit to basics. It occurred to the two famous answers to the question actually occurred to me. One is of the Colombian writer Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who very sincerely and simply said, I write because I want to be loved. And I think that any writer can identify him or herself with that. Although it might sound, a bit, just too simple, too basic. But that's what we want, in a way. And the other is a bit more, pompous or mystical. It's by Franz Kafka, who said, "Gott will nicht, dass ich schreibe, aber ich muss," in German. Meaning, God doesn't want me to write, but I have to. So that's the other answer. It's this inner dictate, that you just have to listen. Although it might not be pleasant, and writing is not always pleasant, as I mentioned already, in a way. So, but there is some urge, something that just makes you write because there is no other option. And my attempt at answer would be, I write because I would want to be awakened. Just as simple as that. I feel awake, yeah. And something happens that cannot happen in any other way, and I'm becoming just somebody who sees or thinks he sees better.
That's lovely. So while Dinko writes for all these beautiful reasons, to be loved, to be awake, why are you writing and for whom are you writing, Dadapeer?
Okay.
Who's your audience? Who do you want to read you?
Uh, so usually when I write, I don't have audience in mind because I write because I have a deepest thing of I want to tell the story, but I don't know who my audience are. Where are they? Where are they reading and all? I don't know. But usually we'll meet when people like in Facebook and all that thing. But I really don't give much importance to that because people like before reading the post. That's what we have, where we have reached. But I think the writers are lovers of sufferings. We usually connect when someone we see somebody is suffering, and also suffering is linked to justice, because justice is a very indirect thing, right? Okay, unless and until if I get to know the suffering, oh, I'm suffering because someone slapped me, unless and until I know that, I don't know whether it's injustice or not. So writers are usually connects to human sufferings, and so then we want to tell a story of things. So why people suffer? So always, for me, what matters is like why human beings behaved in that time zone, and with the fellow characters, why that person behaved in such a way, and why that has happened. So I usually go in search of that. Then the answers will open up. But in doing so, at this time where we are living, we should have some lenses. So those lenses could be caste, gender and class and equality and justice and all those things. I think that's where the political lens of the writer comes in, because we can't just woof around, because many people are saying 100 things in a different in a time zone we are living. So everybody are the marketing controlling us, the governments are controlling us, and patriarchy is controlling us, and so many things are around. So all those things. So I think I write because I want to connect to the human stories. I want to tell human stories. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Much confused answer.
Lovely. Yeah. So, Catrin, you collaborate and you create. And could you tell us why you do it and who's your audience really? Yeah.
I love that quote. I think it's probably that in some form. Yeah, for me, maybe I think I started thinking about writing because I inherited a lot of manuscripts. Because my mother was a writer, so I was grew up with somebody who was writing around me constantly and transcribing people's conversations on the train, which was really embarrassing. And I was I really respected that sort of private space. And then when she passed away when I was very young, years later, when I went through art school, I sort of started handling this material and thinking about like the lifetime of a text, and I started annotating and extending out from those texts and editing them and transforming them and thinking about, I guess, so that's a personal answer, but also like more collectively, I think I write to form some sense of community, and I write with other people to develop on from that idea of continuance, or to develop some sense of wholeness between us as a world. And I try and think of thinking with the world rather than thinking about the world. So yeah, there's many things at play there, but I think that love is definitely one of them, and finding this sense of belonging and finding like a fluid space that we can sort of be who we want to be, but be together in that being. Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
I just take 1 minute. Recently, I was, as she was saying, I was enjoying this collaborative work. Being writer, we always, we are kind of a narcissist to a certain extent, because we always write alone and we want to publish and all. But I've been doing this devising a play. So, this collective writing, collaborative writing, there's a beauty to it. because we don't, a kind of, fully own it up, but we have, this collective writing and collective sharing. There's such a beauty. I feel like we should also explore a new ways of, connecting with the community and all that. So yeah, I just.
That's really lovely. You know, this whole participatory thought of being one with who you're writing for. We are them and we are us too. You know, yeah.
No, actually, I just wanted to ask you, since you are a writer too, what is it that makes you write? Because I'd like to hear your stance on that too. If you can, just approach
Okay,
it so broadly.
So actually, my themes are based on, I mean, inspired by the work I do. I document for the social sector. And sometimes some of those stories just tear you apart. And then I become pregnant with those ideas and those thoughts. And then it just has to come out. And then I just bring it all out. And that's what happens. It's a very, it's a process that's both within and without in that sense of the term. Yeah. So you tell us, Tomica, why do you write?
Well, maybe the best way to explain it would be one sentence from my last novel, which I can't maybe translate literally right now, but I will remember as much as I can. So I wrote that we all have our specific bends or curves from reality in a way which no one can understand, but to lose hope that someone might understand would mean to die in a way. So I think that striving to be understood, to be felt, to feel felt, is something that makes me write. Of course, it's never 100%, it will never be 100%, but that quality of contact is richer and richer the more I write. So, and that makes me alive in a way that I could not be alive without writing.
Right. So writing is what keeps us alive. And on that note, could I throw the house open to questions?
I've been reading a lot of poetry recently, and I read it to a certain point that I got inspired to create something of my own, but I'm a bit confused how to start. Can all of you share your experience on how you started writing poetry, and or any kind of stories that you can tell?
He's been wanting to write poetry, and he wants you to share your thoughts on how you could start writing.
Well, I mean, you just start. I mean, in the way you like, in the way that is convenient for you. Just bravely took a paper and pen and do it. It might be. It might not be satisfying in the beginning, and probably it won't be, because the start is never really brilliant, but it's there to just to push you, and then you just go on, play, experiment, see what you can do. And I mean, the crucial advice, I don't like to give advice, but crucial advice is to read as much as it's possible. It's always a great writer, Argentinian Borges said that his greatest achievement is not what he wrote, but what he read and how he read that. And writing should always start with that, because without that we don't have this fundament, we don't have the language, we don't have the means of expression, and we don't have necessarily to be directly inspired by the great poetry we read, but we needed it just like we need, this kind of thing in any skill, anything we do.
Okay, I have one advice too. Maybe you have problem with validation of anything that goes out from you. That's very often when someone begins. So my advice would be to write down anything that you like, that you think might be important for you one day. A piece of diary thinking, or maybe an idea for a movie, or just a sentence that crossed your mind and you like it in a way. And just write down everything. Later on, you can come back and think, okay, this is interesting, this is not interesting, but this is a part of the process of validation of your own words, of your own ideas. And then, you know, later on, or maybe at the same time, you can write down whatever, what kind poetry, poem, which is a bad poem, because bad poems are allowed to exist. This is what I always say. Bad writing is allowed to exist, and it will take pretty much time before it gets published or before anyone can see it. Just allow yourself to be a bad poet to begin with, or any kind of poet, you know? And then later on, when you have that courage to see your writing with not such a critical eye, you might discern what parts are really good.
For me, the poetry is like a flash. Okay, so the flashes, we don't know what flash it is. It's a sentence or a word or a letter or something. So first, we should just go behind that flash. And sometimes they say that it's always difficult till the first thing comes out. Then the poetry is like say. One letter leads to other letter, next one word leads to other, so it will take you on. So it's like an intersection of those two, then only the poetry comes. I think we should just, as those two said, it's just right. And so we should just believe that it's not some rocket science, just the expressions of our feelings, then that could be the first entry.
Also thinking about poems in different forms, I think. Like a poem can be a conversation between two people. It can be the way that you arrange words into a sentence. A poem can be a sentence. It can be one word. It can be an image. There's a good quote, and I don't know who said it, but somebody said to me once, "Writers are the writers who write," and that really stuck with me. So I think what you were saying about just writing everything, and also what you were saying about reading. Like, I definitely wouldn't be the person I am today without my sort of archangel poets who have kind of guided me and who sort of provide me with ceaseless inspiration. Yeah.
Amazing. So, what our lovely writers are saying is just throw all the inhibitions away and just write. And that's exactly what they're doing, and that's exactly what they're creating. Yeah? And on that note, let's give them a hand. And you can take any more questions outside because I think we're running out.